A millionaire is stunned after years apart, seeing her again inside a hospital. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories like this one. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from today? Please drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The hospital corridor is quiet in a way that feels heavier than silence. The air smells faintly of antiseptic, and the soft rhythm of machines echoes behind closed doors. Polished floors reflect the ceiling lights like a pale mirror, stretching endlessly ahead. Nurses move with practiced calm, their shoes barely making a sound as they pass. At the end of the corridor, a man stands alone. His name is Daniel Wright. To the outside world, he is a self-made millionaire, the kind of man whose name appears on glass office towers and charity gala invitations. He is used to control, used to decisions that move markets and shape lives, used to rooms that fall silent when he walks in. But none of that matters here. Daniel adjusts the cuff of his tailored jacket, a habit he does not even realize he still has when he is nervous. He was called to this hospital because of a private donation, a quiet arrangement he made months ago. A favor, a responsibility, something he believed would take 10 minutes of polite conversation before he returned to the world he understood. The door in front of him slides open, and everything stops. For a brief moment, Daniel forgets how to breathe. Inside the room, sunlight filters through half-closed blinds, cutting the space into soft lines of gold and shadow. A heart monitor ticks steadily, each sound marking time he did not know he was about to lose. Near the bed stands a woman in light blue scrubs, her hair pulled back neatly, her posture calm and professional. He knows that posture. He knows the way she tilts her head when she listens. He knows her. Her name is Claire. Years ago, she was the one person who saw Daniel before the money, before the headlines, before the walls he built around himself. She was the woman who believed in him when believing was easy, and the woman he lost when life became complicated. She disappeared from his world without explanation, leaving behind questions he buried under success and silence. And now, after all these years, she is here, in a hospital. Claire turns slightly, sensing someone behind her. Her eyes lift, and when they meet his, something flickers across her face. Surprise, recognition, and then a careful mask of composure that tells Daniel she has learned how to survive without answers too. Neither of them speaks. The space between them fills with everything they never said, apologies that were never given, nights that never happened, futures that ended before they began. Daniel feels the weight of it press against his chest, heavier than any loss he has ever calculated on a balance sheet. This is not a boardroom. This is not a negotiation. This is the past, standing in front of him, alive and breathing. And as the heart monitor continues its steady rhythm, Daniel realizes something terrifying and true. No amount of money prepared him for this moment. Because some reunions do not ask for permission. They simply arrive, and they change everything. Daniel does not step into the room right away. He stands just outside the doorway, his body angled as if he might still turn around and leave. For years, that had been his instinct whenever Claire crossed his mind. Walk away, stay busy, build something bigger so the past could not catch up. It never worked. Claire breaks the silence first, her voice calm, measured, professional, the kind of voice that belongs in hospitals, not in memories. You can come in, the patient is resting. Her words are not meant for him, not really. They are meant for the space between them, for the years they have not spoken, for the weight neither of them knows how to carry yet. Daniel steps forward. Each step feels deliberate, heavier than it should be, as if the floor itself is resisting him. He keeps his eyes forward, fixed on the bed, on the slow rise and fall of the blankets, on anything except her face. If he looks at her too long, he is afraid the past will speak for him. The patient is an older man, thin, pale, asleep under white sheets. Tubes and wires surround him, steady and quiet. Daniel barely registers the details. His attention keeps pulling back to Claire, to the familiar shape of her hands as she checks the chart, to the way she stands just slightly to the side, giving him space without being asked. She always did that. This is not the Claire he remembers from crowded apartments and late-night dinners eaten straight from the pan. This Claire moves with control, with purpose. There is a steadiness to her that was not there before. Daniel clears his throat. The sound feels too loud in the small room. "I did not know you worked here," he says. It is a weak sentence, a safe one. It avoids everything that matters. Claire nods once. "I have been here for 3 years." 3 years. Daniel does the math without meaning to. 3 years of early mornings and late nights. 3 years of walking these halls. 3 years of building a life that did not include him. "And before that?" he asks. She pauses, just long enough for him to notice. Other hospitals, other cities. Her eyes flick up briefly, meeting his for a fraction of a second before moving away again. The message is clear. She will not give him the story for free. Daniel feels something tighten in his chest. He had imagined this moment so many times. In his imagination, he had control. He had the right words. He had answers. In reality, he has none. Outside the room, a cart rolls by. Somewhere down the hall, a phone rings. Life continues, indifferent to the fact that 2 people are standing in the ruins of what they never finished. Claire finishes checking the chart and sets it back at the foot of the bed. "You are here because of the donation," she says, not looking at him. The hospital appreciates it. There it is, the distance, the line she draws between them. "I did not come for that," Daniel says before he can stop himself. Claire stills. Her hands rest flat against the metal rail of the bed. Slowly, she turns to face him. "Then why did you come?" she asks. The question lands harder than any accusation. Daniel opens his mouth, then closes it again. The truth presses against his ribs, sharp and uncomfortable. He thinks of the night she left, the unanswered messages, the silence that followed. He thinks of the years he told himself it was better this way, easier. "I do not know," he finally says. For the first time, Claire's composure cracks. Not much, just a small shift in her expression, a tiredness that was not there a moment ago. "Neither did I," she says quietly. They stand there, 2 strangers bound by a shared past, surrounded by machines that measure heartbeats and breaths, as if reminding them that time does not wait for clarity. Daniel realizes something then, something he has avoided admitting for years. This hospital did not just bring him back to Claire, it brought him back to the moment his life split in 2. And this time, there will be no walking away without consequences. Claire becomes part of Daniel's routine before he realizes it has happened. He tells himself it is temporary, that he is only staying involved because of the patient, because of the hospital, because leaving now would feel irresponsible. It is a reasonable excuse, and Daniel has always been good at building reasonable excuses. Each morning, he arrives just after sunrise. The city outside is still waking up, but the hospital never sleeps. The air is cool, the lights too bright, the hallways already alive with quiet urgency. Daniel stops at the same coffee stand in the lobby, orders the same black coffee, and takes it upstairs. Claire is usually already there. She moves through the room with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, adjusting equipment, speaking softly to the patient, even when he does not respond. Daniel notices the details. The way she explains what she is doing, even though no one asked. The way her voice lowers when the machines beep too sharply, as if trying to calm them. It is not dramatic. It is not heroic. It is care. At first, Daniel stays near the door, hands in his pockets, unsure where to stand or what to do. He watches more than he speaks. Claire does not push him away, but she does not invite him closer either. She treats him like any other visitor, polite and distant, careful not to blur lines. But lines blur anyway. One morning, Claire hands him a pair of disposable gloves without comment. Daniel hesitates, then puts them on. She shows him how to help reposition the patient, where to place his hands, how to move slowly so nothing pulls or strains. "Easy," she says, her voice steady. "He is fragile." Daniel nods. He follows her lead. It surprises him how natural it feels to listen to her again. Days pass, then more days. Daniel rearranges meetings. He takes calls in the hallway instead of conference rooms. The world he once controlled begins to orbit around hospital hours and visiting windows. Claire notices, even if she does not say it. Sometimes, when the patient sleeps, they sit quietly on opposite sides of the room. The silence is different now, less sharp, less defensive. The past still sits between them, but it no longer feels like a weapon. "You always hated hospitals," Claire says one afternoon, breaking the quiet. Daniel looks up. "I still do." A faint smile touches her lips, gone almost as quickly as it appears. "You said they made you feel powerless." He exhales slowly. "They still do." Claire nods, as if that answer makes sense. Because it does. In this place, money means very little. Influence even less. Machines decide what they decide. Bodies heal on their own schedule, or they do not heal at all. Daniel learns the rhythms of the ward. He learns the names of nurses. He learns how long it takes Claire to finish her rounds. He learns that she eats lunch standing up more often than sitting down. One evening, she catches him watching her hands as she adjusts an intravenous line. "What?" she asks, not unkindly. "You do not rush," he says, "even when everyone else does." She considers that for a moment. Rushing makes mistakes easier. The words stay with him. At night, when Daniel returns to his empty apartment, the silence feels different than it used to. It is no longer the silence of control. It is the silence of waiting. Waiting for morning. Waiting for the quiet room. Waiting for the woman who once knew him better than anyone else, and who now stands just close enough to remind him of everything he lost. This is not reconciliation. This is not forgiveness. It is something smaller, slower, more dangerous. It is the beginning of healing. And Daniel senses, with a mix of fear and clarity, that healing will require more from him than success ever did. The shift happens quietly, the way most important things do. It begins with a file. Daniel does not mean to see it. He is standing near the nurse's station one afternoon, waiting for Claire to finish updating the chart, when a folder is set down too hard on the counter. Papers slide loose. Before anyone can stop it, one page turns face up. A familiar name catches his eye. Claire freezes. Daniel does not touch the file, but he does not need to. He has learned to read numbers, dates, and codes faster than most people read sentences. What he sees makes his stomach tighten. A diagnosis. Old. Years old. Claire notices the change in his face and reaches for the folder, pulling it back toward herself with a controlled motion. Too controlled. "That is not relevant," she says. Daniel looks at her. Really looks at her, at the faint tension in her shoulders, at the way she avoids meeting his eyes. "You were sick," he says. The words are not a question. Claire exhales slowly, as if she has been holding that breath for years. "I am fine now." "You were sick," he repeats, "when you left." Silence stretches between them. A nurse passes by, unaware that something fragile is cracking open just a few feet away. Claire closes the folder and sets it aside. This is not the place for this conversation. "When was it ever the right place?" Daniel asks. The edge in his voice surprises them both. Claire studies him for a long moment. Then she nods toward the empty consultation room down the hall. 5 minutes, she says. "That is all I have." Inside the small room, the door clicks shut behind them. The space is plain. 2 chairs, a desk, no machines, no interruptions. Claire sits. Daniel remains standing. "You disappeared," he says. "You left without a word. You let me believe you chose to walk away." "I did not let you believe anything," she replies. "You never asked." The words sting because they are true. "I was 28, she continues, her voice steady but tired. "I had no insurance, no savings, and a diagnosis that came with words doctors do not like to soften. I needed treatment, time, focus. And you did not think I deserved to know?" Daniel asks. "I thought you deserved a future," she says. And at that moment, I did not know if I had one to share. The room feels smaller. Claire tells him everything then. The early symptoms she ignored, the tests, the treatment schedule she could not reconcile with his rising career and constant travel, the fear that she would become something he felt obligated to manage. "I watched you build your life," she says quietly. "I did not want to be the weight that slowed you down." Daniel sits heavily in the chair across from her. "You decided that for me," he says. "Yes," she admits, "because I was afraid." The honesty disarms him more than any argument could. Outside the room, the hospital continues its rhythm. Inside, years of misunderstanding rearrange themselves into something clearer and far more painful. "You could have trusted me," Daniel says. Claire looks down at her hands. "I trusted you enough to let you go. The 5 minutes end too soon. When they return to the ward, nothing looks different, but everything feels altered. The routine remains. The care continues. But now, when Daniel watches Claire work, he sees not just strength, but cost. And for the first time since he became a millionaire, Daniel understands something he never understood before. Success did not cost him love. Silence did. The breaking point comes late at night. The ward is quieter than usual. The lights dimmed, the pace slowed to a careful hush. Most visitors have gone home. The patient sleeps, his breathing steady but shallow, the machines beside the bed tracing thin green lines that rise and fall with mechanical patience. Daniel sits alone in the room. Claire is on another floor, covering for a colleague who called in sick. Daniel offered to leave, to come back in the morning, but she shook her head. "Stay," she said. "He is calmer when there is someone here." So Daniel stays. He sits in the chair beside the bed, hands resting on his knees, watching a man he barely knows fight a battle he cannot control. The powerlessness he once feared presses in again, heavier now, because he understands it better. He thinks about what Claire told him, about the years she spent learning to survive while he learned how to win, about how close they were to sharing a life neither of them knew how to protect. The monitor changes its tone. It is subtle, just enough to pull Daniel forward in his seat. He looks at the screen, then at the patient. The rise and fall of the chest seems shallower now, the rhythm uneven. Daniel stands and steps into the hallway. "Claire," he calls softly, spotting her at the far end. "Something is wrong." She moves instantly. There is no hesitation, no panic, just action. She checks the monitors, adjusts the bed, speaks calmly as she calls for assistance. Other staff arrive, efficient and focused. Daniel steps back, pressing himself against the wall, his presence suddenly unnecessary. He watches Claire work. This is not the controlled, composed woman he has seen on quiet mornings. This is someone fully alive inside the chaos. Her voice clear, her movements precise, her attention absolute. She does not look at him. She does not need to. For the first time, Daniel sees her not as the woman he lost, but as the woman she became. After long minutes, the crisis eases. The alarms soften. The room exhales. Claire leans against the counter, closing her eyes briefly before straightening again. Only then does she look at Daniel. "He will be all right," she says. Daniel nods, but words fail him. Later, when the patient is stable and the room is quiet again, Daniel finds Claire in the small break area down the hall. She is sitting alone, a paper cup of water untouched in her hands. "You saved him," Daniel says. She shakes her head. "We did. You could have left," he continues. "You could have chosen something easier, something safer." Claire meets his gaze. Healing is never easy. It is just necessary. The simplicity of the statement undoes him. "I was wrong," Daniel says, "about everything." Claire does not interrupt. "I thought love was something you protected by controlling it," he continues, "by keeping it neat, manageable. I thought if something hurt too much, walking away was strength." He pauses, choosing his words with care, something he has not always done. "I see now that you stayed when it mattered, even when it cost you." Claire listens, her expression unreadable. "I cannot change the past," Daniel says, "but I do not want to keep living as if silence is safety." For a long moment, neither of them speaks. Finally, Claire exhales slowly. "Healing does not happen all at once," she says. "It happens in choices, small ones, every day." Daniel nods. "Then let me choose to stay. Not as a millionaire, not as a solution, just as a man who finally understands that love does not need protection. It needs presence." The truth does not arrive with drama. It arrives with paperwork. 2 days after the late-night emergency, Daniel is reviewing hospital reports in a small administrative office, something he would never have done before this place became personal. He tells himself it is part of his donation oversight, but he knows better now. He is looking for understanding, not numbers. A discrepancy catches his eye. It is minor at first, a line item that does not match the timeline Claire described. A consultation date moved forward by several weeks. A treatment authorization approved faster than protocol allows. Daniel leans closer. He requests the archived records. No favors, no pressure, just access. What he finds makes the room feel colder. Years ago, when Claire received her diagnosis, her case had been flagged for a specialized clinical trial. one that could have covered most of her treatment costs, one that required approval from a private medical foundation, a foundation Daniel recognizes immediately. It bears his family name. At the time, Daniel had been newly wealthy, newly powerful, and dangerously distracted. The foundation was managed by a board member he trusted without question, a man who believed emotions were liabilities and personal entanglements were weaknesses. Claire's application was denied. The stated reason was incomplete documentation, but the internal notes tell a different story. Conflict of interest, risk exposure, recommendation to avoid association. Daniel feels something sharp and bitter rise in his chest. She did not just leave because she was afraid. She was pushed into a corner. That evening, Daniel finds Claire on the rooftop terrace reserved for staff breaks. The city lights stretch below them, distant and quiet. She is leaning against the railing, her expression tired but calm, as if she has already learned not to expect good news. "I know," she says before he can speak. Daniel stops a few steps away. "You knew?" "I suspected," she replies. "When the denial came through so quickly, when no one would explain why." "Why did you never tell me?" he asks. Claire turns to face him. "Because by then, your name was everywhere. I did not want my illness to become a complication in your life." Daniel swallows hard. "It was not just fear," she continues. "It was protection. For you. For me." He shakes his head slowly. "It should not have been your burden to carry." "No," she agrees, "but it was." Daniel tells her everything. The records, the board member, the decision that was made without his knowledge but under his name. Claire listens without interruption. When he finishes, she looks away, out over the city. "So that is it," she says quietly. "It was never about me being unworthy. It was about being inconvenient." "Yes," Daniel says, "and I am going to fix it." Claire turns back to him sharply. "This is not about revenge." "I know," he says. "It is about accountability." The next morning, Daniel requests a formal review. The board member is suspended pending investigation. Policies are rewritten. Medical funding criteria are made transparent and public. There are no press releases, no announcements, just corrections. When Daniel returns to the hospital that evening, Claire meets him at the door of the ward. "You did not have to do this," she says. "I did," he replies, "because healing without truth is just survival." Claire studies him for a long moment. Then she nods. For the first time since they reunited, the space between them feels lighter. The past has not changed, but it has finally been named, and sometimes that is where healing truly begins. The choice does not come with a dramatic announcement. It comes with restraint. In the days that follow the investigation, Daniel steps back, not away, but aside. He stops rearranging his schedule to be everywhere at once. He stops hovering in the ward, as if presence alone can repair what was broken. He learns something unfamiliar and uncomfortable. He learns to wait. Claire notices immediately. He still arrives in the mornings, still brings the same black coffee, still checks on the patient. But he does not linger when she is busy. He does not ask questions that reach too far into her life. When she is tired, he lets the silence remain what it is. Respectful, clean, earned. One afternoon, Claire finishes her shift later than usual. The sun is already low, casting long shadows across the lobby. Daniel is sitting on a bench near the exit, not standing, not pacing, waiting. "You do not have to do this," she says. "I know," he replies. "That is why I am." They walk outside together. The air is cooler, the city quieter than it looks from above. For a moment, neither of them speaks. "You fixed the foundation," Claire says finally. "I corrected it," Daniel answers. "I cannot undo what happened. I can only decide what happens next." She studies his face, searching for something she has not seen in years. There is no urgency there now, no attempt to persuade or promise, just intention. "I am not asking you to forgive me," Daniel continues, "and I am not asking you to come back to something we were never allowed to finish." He stops walking and turns to face her. "I am asking you to let me show you who I am now, slowly. If you choose to walk away again, I will not stop you." The words settle between them. This is the moment Claire has been bracing for since the hospital corridor, since the file, since the truth surfaced. Not because it is dramatic, but because it is honest. She exhales, the sound soft but heavy. "You were always good at grand gestures," she says. "They used to scare me." "And now?" Daniel asks. "Now I am afraid of quiet promises," she admits, "because they require consistency." Daniel nods. "Then let this be a quiet one." Over the next weeks, that promise is tested. The patient improves slowly. Claire works long shifts. Daniel leaves when he should, stays when invited. He attends meetings without mentioning her name. He listens more than he speaks. There are days Claire keeps her distance. There are days she allows him closer. Daniel accepts both without complaint. One evening, as they stand together watching the patient sleep, Claire speaks. "I do not know if I am ready for what you are offering," she says. Daniel does not rush to answer. "That is all right." "I do not know if I can trust that staying will not hurt again." "That is all right too," he says. She looks at him then, really looks at him. "What if I choose myself this time?" she asks. Daniel meets her gaze without flinching. "Then I will stand beside that choice, even if it does not include me." The words are simple. They cost him more than any deal he has ever signed. Claire turns back to the bed, to the quiet work of healing. But something has shifted. For the first time since they met again, the future does not feel like a trap. It feels like a decision. And Daniel understands that love, real love, is not proven by how tightly you hold on. It is proven by whether you are willing to let go. The change becomes visible in ways Daniel does not announce. It shows up in the hospital first. New equipment arrives quietly, approved without fanfare. Staffing gaps are filled. Burnout prevention programs are funded and implemented, not named after donors, not branded with plaques. Claire notices the difference before anyone explains it to her. Nurses have time to breathe. Patients are no longer rushed through decisions they do not understand. Care feels less like survival and more like dignity. One afternoon, Claire finds Daniel standing in the pediatric wing, watching a young nurse kneel beside a frightened patient, explaining a procedure with patience and warmth. He does not interrupt. He does not direct. He simply observes. "You did this," Claire says, stepping beside him. Daniel shakes his head. "They did. I just stopped the system from working against them." She studies him, searching for the familiar signs of performance. There are none. Healing, she realizes, is not loud. Outside the hospital, the changes ripple outward. Daniel restructures his foundation to include independent oversight. He invites medical professionals, not investors, into decision-making roles. He sits in meetings and listens to stories he once dismissed as inefficiencies. At night, he reads through letters from patients who never expected to be seen. He does not answer all of them. He answers the ones that ask questions. Weeks pass. The patient they have been caring for begins to wake more often, responding to voices, squeezing hands. Claire's routines shift from maintenance to encouragement. Daniel is there, not always in the room, but never far. One evening, as Claire finishes her shift, Daniel waits by the elevators. "I am not here to keep you," he says, "but I wanted you to know something." She turns to him. "I am opening a long-term care initiative," he continues, "led by medical professionals, independent, transparent. I want you to be part of the advisory board." Claire is silent. "This is not a job offer," Daniel adds quickly, "and it is not an apology disguised as one. It is an invitation. You decide if it fits your life." She considers him carefully. "And if I say no, then it will still exist," he says. "That matters more." The elevator arrives. Claire steps inside, then stops. "I will think about it," she says. That night, Claire walks home instead of taking the bus. The city feels different, not kinder, just quieter. She thinks about the choices she made years ago, the ones she thought were sacrifices, and the ones she now understands as survival. She thinks about Daniel, not the man he was, but the man he is becoming. Days later, Claire agrees to attend one meeting. She sits across from doctors, nurses, administrators. She watches Daniel speak last, not first. When disagreements arise, he does not override them. He asks questions. Afterward, Claire pulls him aside. "This is not about fixing the past," she says. "No," Daniel agrees. "It is about not repeating it." The patient is discharged the following week. On his last day, he thanks them both. "You did not just treat me," he says. "You stayed." Those words follow Claire long after she leaves the room. Later that evening, she finds Daniel on the hospital steps. "I am still afraid," she says. "I know," he replies, "But I see what you are doing," she continues, "and I see why." Daniel does not reach for her. He does not close the distance. "I am not asking you to heal for me," he says. "I am healing because it is the right thing to do." Claire takes a step closer. For the first time, she does not feel like she is choosing between herself and love. She feels like she is choosing alignment, and that makes all the difference. The hospital returns to its usual rhythm. Weeks have passed since the patient was discharged, since the ward that once held so much tension began to feel like just another place of work again. Claire still walks the same halls, still wears the same scrubs, still speaks in the calm, steady voice patients trust. But something inside her has settled. Not because everything is resolved, but because nothing is being avoided anymore. Daniel no longer comes every morning. He no longer needs to. Their lives have found a balance that does not require constant proximity to feel secure. When he visits the hospital now, it is purposeful, quiet, and brief. And when he leaves, Claire does not feel abandoned. One evening, months after their reunion, Daniel waits for Claire outside the hospital, leaning against his car as the last light of day fades from the sky. There is no urgency in his posture, no expectation. Claire steps outside, tired but calm. She pauses when she sees him. "You are early," she says. "I wanted to walk," he replies. "If that is all right?" They move side by side down the sidewalk, the city breathing around them. The sound of traffic fades as they turn onto a quieter street. For a while, neither speaks. "I accepted the advisory role," Claire says eventually. Daniel nods, a small smile touching his face. "I know." "You did not try to convince me," she adds. "I promised I would not," he says. Claire stops walking. Daniel stops too. "I spent years believing love meant sacrifice," she says. That caring for someone meant disappearing when things became difficult. She meets his eyes. "You showed me something different." Daniel listens. He always does now. "You stayed without demanding," she continues. "You corrected harm without asking for credit. You let me choose without fear." She exhales slowly. "That is what healing looks like to me." Daniel steps closer, careful, unhurried. "I am not asking for forever," he says. "I am asking for honesty, for presence, for the chance to build something that does not require either of us to disappear." Claire considers him for a long moment. Then she reaches for his hand, not as a promise, not as a declaration, as a choice. They stand there quietly, fingers intertwined, the city continuing without noticing. There is no audience, no applause, just two people who finally understand what it means to stay. Later, as they walk on, Claire glances at him. "Do you regret it?" she asks. "All the years you lost?" Daniel thinks carefully before answering. "I regret the silence," he says, "but not the path that led me here. Because now I know the difference between success and meaning." She smiles softly. At the hospital, a new plaque is installed near the entrance. It does not carry Daniel's name. It does not carry any name. It reads simply, "Care begins with presence." Claire notices it one morning as she arrives for work. She pauses, then continues inside. Some stories end with grand declarations. This one ends with something quieter. Two lives, once divided by fear and silence, moving forward not because they were healed by love, but because they chose to heal together. And that choice, made daily and without spectacle, becomes the truest form of commitment. Because love does not arrive fully formed. It is built, one honest moment at a time.